Welcome back to Coliseum Forum. I know I say this every time. I don't think my guests really need an introduction today, but we're going to do it anyway. We have Mahmoud. Wow, we talked about this pre-show and I still messed up. Mahmud Asrar, who you know from X-Men or Conan or a million other books that he's drawn fantastically over his career. We also have, I guess, Jason Aaron. I can't believe that I'm getting to talk to today about his new books, which you guys can see here. Bugs War. I don't really get nervous doing these anymore. I've done them for a long time, except today I'm like really nervous because I'm actually a huge fan of both of you guys. And
Is
they
it
were
all the
like,
is it all the bugs that are involved that are making you uncomfortable?
No,
Is that a
I
it's
live
a
in
lot of bugs.
Florida. I live in Florida. It's a lot of bugs already, right?
It's
Have
true.
you ever seen a palmetto bug? It's like a giant like cockroach. They're awful and they're
Yeah,
everywhere. Um, no, it's
sure.
Oh,
just
sweet.
I'm a huge X-Men fan, so Mahmoud, I've just been a big fan of yours forever. And I mean, you're Jason Aaron, and so they were like, "Hey, you have to go to two meetings with Jason Aaron today, and one of them you get to interview him." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm totally prepared for that." And then we're
Well, that's
so
okay. We love talking about bug wars, so we're happy
Absolutely.
to do so.
yeah, let's jump into it. So we've got Bug Wars, which is your new creator-owned property. We've seen you move a little bit away from your Marvel stuff, and you've had a big success with the new TMNT relaunch. Congratulations and Absolute Superman. But now we're going into the world of bugs and wars. Can you tell us a little bit more about this project?
Yeah, yeah, it has, last year was a good one for me, like launching Turtles, launching Absolute Superman, two of the biggest launches of the year. And this book has kind of been the other thing I've been working on. Mahmoud and I have been working on it for a few years now, kind of building this landscape, this huge sprawling dark fantasy landscape in this backyard in a small town in Alabama. And for me, like for my part of this, it goes back to when I was a kid, growing up in the 80s, falling in love with comics. Sort of the Atom was one of the first comics I fell in love with, which was a story about the Atom, kind of discovering this um, hidden kingdom of tiny frog riding people in the jungles of Brazil. And it's like a, dark sword and sorcery story. And while I was reading books like that, I was spending most of my time playing in this huge backyard at my house in Piney Woods, Alabama. This yard that kind of seemed to, stretch for miles, that had a brush pile and an old shed and overgrown garden and honeysuckles and kudzu, and kind of surrounded by thick Alabama woods. And I very much feel like, looking back at it now, that I became a writer and a storyteller in that yard and in those woods, just with, running around playing with pretend swords, whacking trees, and making up these elaborate fantasy sagas in my head. So this is kind of a book I've been wanting to do for literally 40 years, since I was that kid. And the yard of Bug Wars is exactly the yard that I played in, exact same yard I played in as a kid, like based it on that. The house is the same. I kind of drew a crude childlike map. I didn't have to pretend to draw it like a child. I just already draw like a small child.
Right.
So I drew the map, of like our various Bug Wars kingdoms, and it's in some sense it's kind of an ode to that sense of childhood where your backyard did feel like the whole world, right? It felt like Middle Earth, or it felt like the Hyborian world, and that there's 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 all sorts of adventure you can imagine just right outside your own doorstep. So this is that kind of story, but it is decidedly not a kid story, even though the main character is a kid. Like, the world he finds is a very, very dangerous one.
So
Yeah.
you you and Mahmoud had worked together previously on Conan. Mahmoud, how did you get roped into this?
I'm sorry. How did I
How
get
did you
ro
get
Oh, okay.
How did I rope you into this?
Well, it wasn't hard, I've been a big fan of Jason for a long time, and we worked on a few things, of course, mainly Conan stuff. And that wasn't enough for us, so like I bugged him, pun intended, uh, uh, that we should do something, going forward and stuff. And I told him that I want to do creator own stuff, because I've been doing mainstream for a while. but I wanted to do something of my own, to create my own worlds, something, like entirely my own with no restrictions and stuff. So, and Jason was, of course, happy to hear that. And, and he told me about the story that he had about this Bug Wars. And I was at first scared because I have this kind of weird relationship with bugs. I've been afraid of them, and I couldn't look at them and stuff. So like I was intimidated at first, but I loved the idea because it would be very challenging and crazy and very difficult to do. And I never run away from that kind of stuff, so like really like that. So like it wasn't hard for him to do the roping in.
Right.
Sorry,
So,
sorry, I didn't. I'm sorry, I've been making you draw so many bugs.
No, no, no. The thing is, like, yeah, it actually helped me. Researching all the bugs and everything. I've learned a lot about them. I understand them better, and I appreciate them better now. And I save bugs all the time these days. Whenever we find some stuff in our house, like I take them out. And like so. Yeah, you've changed
Good.
my perspective on
So it's
them.
been a healing. It's been a healing experience.
Indeed, indeed, for sure.
it's a journey of growth. That's amazing. So, uh, you talk about really coming up with becoming a writer in the backyard of in Alabama. I have to ask, and I meant to Google this before the show started. Is West Bottom a real place, or is this just a fictional place for the comic?
It's a fictional place. Like I grew up in Piney Woods, Alabama, but that's not very far from the actual real town of Bug Tussle. Like Bug Tussle, Alabama is a real place.
Okay.
So I thought at first, like, oh, maybe we should set the book there, but it felt a bit too on the nose, you know.
Right.
But you do in issue one, you do we reference Bug Tussle exterminators. Um, and I did a prequel, like a little prequel prose piece that we ran in the ash can we put out late last year at New York Comic Con, and that's called The Boys from Bug Tussle. But yeah, West Bottom, Alabama is kind of a stand-in for Piney Woods, Alabama, where I grew up. And again, it's a this house is a very, very real place where I spent my formative years.
Oh, so it's not just the yard. The house we're in as well is this is little
Yeah,
Jason's house.
yeah. I mean, it's not like I mean, I lived a lot of places growing up. Like we moved around a lot, but I could draw a diagram of the layout of that house. I remember it all so vividly. So I did it. I mean, I didn't do that for my mood. It's not like based exactly in terms of the interior. It's not based exactly, but it's still the parts that are important, the parts we've seen so far are pretty much the same, and the layout of it is the same. That house burned down at some point, so the house that's there now is not exactly the same as it was before, but similar, like exterior is similar. I mean, I haven't lived there in a long time, so I did
Sure.
like cruise by and stalk it last time I was there. And it's wild, you go back now, like I said, when in my memory, when I grew up there, it felt like we're talking so much land. There's a huge front yard with pine trees, big side yard, massive backyard, and just all thick woods around it. When you go back now as an adult, you're like, oh yeah, it doesn't seem as big now. It seems a lot
Sure.
smaller, and a lot of the woods are gone. They've been cleared out. Like the stream, I spent so much time there now is like a little trickle, when at the time it felt like a raging river. So it's less impressive going back as an adult, but this is the version from my memory, just of course with a lot more murderous bugs and tiny sword wielding barbarians added to the yard.
So I have to ask, what's it like to collaborate on a project? I mean, obviously, this is something very nostalgic for you, with it being, part of your childhood. But Mahmoud, coming into this, what's it like to try to, envision, all the way from Austria, Alabama in the middle of a forest?
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. I just told this to Jason a little while ago that, despite, us living in different parts of the world so far apart and, having very different backgrounds and, like in culture and everything, the way our imaginations work are so similar in the in some senses. Like when he told me about all the story about the backyard and everything, it conjured up the memories that I had when I was a kid. I lived in Ankara, Turkey, back when I was small, and we were in the city. We didn't have like any backyards or giant, like foresty areas around where we lived. But the apartments where we lived, they always had like a small backyard in the back. And I would do the same, like Jason, like I would go there, like play with my toys, like imagine everything was like a an area for having adventures and let my imagination run wild, and stuff like that. So in terms of that, in mind, I feel like we had that connection already, and having the experience of working with Jason before, things were much easier. And I feel because everything was so vivid for Jason when he was doing the story and like bringing this thing to life. It wasn't hard for me to imagine. I've never been to that part of the U.S. at all. I haven't been to Alabama or anywhere. But like the way he explains it, the way I've seen it, like and we've researched it, like it felt like I've been there, like and I've experienced it, and so and added that to my own memories and everything, it just flowed out,
And
Excellent.
I,
Yeah,
I
no,
think,
absolutely.
I mean, I think the yard of this book is both, yeah, it's a backyard in, this house in the backwoods of Alabama. It is also a place unlike anything that exists anywhere on our planet, right? It is both meant to be a real place for this kid, but also it's our Middle Earth. It's our Hyborian world. It is a dark, fantastic collection of these kind of warring kingdoms, right? So it's on the one hand, where all the metropolis for the Beetle writers is like this. It's like Mos Eisley, where it's this hive of scum and villainy, right? It's also a pile of brush. It's a brush pile. It's a pile of old dead limbs, like the citadels of the ant imperium are ant hills. Um, the there's some potted ferns hanging on the side of the house covered with spider webs. That's like the mystical realm of the spider witches.
Right.
Like you go inside that potted fern and it's full of webs, and like it's sort of like the TARDIS. It's way bigger on the inside than it appears to be from the outside. So this is a combination of, you know, the grass and the weeds and the brush and the sort of things you would see in like an everyday backyard. But when you shrink down to the size of a bug and start walking around, it's an entirely different sort of landscape.
So I'm
And not only
realizing.
those, we also have different areas that we will visit, and we probably will leave for later on. Like there's a dead dog in the yard,
Oh
and there's
boy.
like also
Right.
like which is one of my favorite areas in the place, but
The
and
dead
like
the dead dog is your favorite?
one of mine. Yeah, I mean it
Oh
is
yeah,
very interesting.
Yeah.
I won't get spoil stuff right now, but I mean yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Well, yeah, this I mean this story, this is like book one of what we want to be a long, sprawling fantasy saga. This book one is 6 issues, and over the course of those 6 issues, we do travel around the yard to some of those different locations we've talked about, and you'll see them on the map. There's also other parts of it that we show there that are, as yet unexplored. So there's still a lot to be explored there, and there's some stuff you kind of don't see until the end of issue 6, So we're sort of having a lot of fun exploring this yard, but also setting the stage for a lot of other stories to come.
I realize we set up how you two got together to work on this book, and we've kind of set up the setting, but we really haven't talked about, what is the setup for Bug Wars? Like who are our characters? What's happening in Bug Wars? What can we give away without spoiling too much?
What it is, it really at the heart, it's like a family story. It's this family, the Slaymakers, move into this old house in West Bottom, Alabama, and it's the house where the dad grew up, and he died there under mysterious circumstances years ago. And this is kind of the only place left they have to go to now. So they're kind of forced to move into this old house, and it's full of bad memories and maybe full of a lot of insects. And there's a lot of tension there with the family. The main character is Slade Slaymaker, and he doesn't get along at all with his older brother Sid. And something happens, and Slade ends up discovering, kind of setup we've seen before in a lot of these sort of stories. Is Slade finds this mysterious amulet, and when he touches it, something happens, and next thing he knows, he's the size of a bug, lost in his own backyard, and so it's him, as kind of the fish out of water, realizing there's all these mites and bugs and these kingdoms, warring kingdoms in the backyard. But really, it's at the end of the day, it's like a fight. He has to fight to save his own family. Um, we kind of reveal that in issue 2 of like what's really going on here. What are the stakes? What's this fight about? But it's really him, having to embrace his role here in the yard and do whatever he can to save the people he loves.
So that kind of leads into my next question. We talked a lot about it, being based in nostalgia of, you growing up in the backyard and kind of playing in this area and really envisioning it. But you know, and I get to brag about this all the time, but as a retailer, we kind of get to see a sneak peek of this stuff a little bit early. Um, you know, this is not kid stuff. This is definitely a very hardcore fantasy book for hardcore fantasy fans. Why did you go that route instead of, say, maybe like an all ages route?
Well, Mahmoud is really good at drawing people getting their heads chopped off and
And dead dogs.
and dead dogs.
Yeah.
Dead dogs, naked people, all kind of stuff.
You get all that pretty much right out of the gate, like pretty much within the first like 4 pages. You've gotten 4 or 6 pages. You've gotten all that. I mean, like we said, Mahmoud and I worked together on Conan for Conan the Barbarian and King Conan, and had a ton of fun exploring the Hyborian world. I think we both love those kind of stories. We both love working on those kind of stories, and we wanted to do one that was ours. And so doing a book at Image means there's kind of no restrictions, and we can do whatever we want. So in my mind, this was always like setup wise, this could be a kid's story. Like we've seen stories like this before for kids. I mean, this has elements of stuff like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, where you shrink a kid down and they set off on an adventure in their own yard. And I love that idea, but I've always wanted to do the Garth Ennis version of that, like the Game of Thrones
Right.
version, where this is not. I mean, but bugs in some ways can be scary, right? Like there's a
Yeah.
million, I mean, a billion, there are a billion insects for every one of us, every human being on the face of the planet. So I think we always have this fear of bugs, and because they're all around us. There's a spider probably watching me right now somewhere in this room. They're always hiding right beneath our feet. Um, so it's kind of a perfect setting to do this really dark fantasy saga, and we kind of like I'm saying, we set the stage right out of the gate in issue 1. Issue 1's double sized. It's almost 2 issues. It's like 37 pages of story with some back matter, like 6 or 7 pages of back matter that are kind of world building things, like excerpts from one of the main characters' journals, sort of telling you about the society. And in issue 1, it's sort of detailing the culture of the ant imperium, and then the different kinds of real world ants that you'll find in this yard. Um, and then yeah, 6 issues overall for this first story, and it's full of a lot of in that first issue. Mahmood knocks it out of the gate with these setting the tone with these huge, sprawling, sweeping, epic battle scenes.
Yeah, we're in a tiny world, but the story is really gigantic and everything is like really big scale. It is funny in that way that it's probably the biggest thing that I've ever worked on, but set in such a
But
small
also the
world, you know.
smallest.
Yeah,
Right.
it's like yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, we're really far ahead as well. Like I've already completed the first 5 issues, ready to start on number 6. We are hoping to get all done before even the first issue comes out, so we're far ahead. There will be no lateness or whatever. And like we're loving every minute of it.
That's amazing. So let me ask you this. I mean, obviously, Jason, you have your fans, and Mahmoud, you have your fans. Uh, which work that you've done in the past do you think this skews close? Like, if somebody comes into the comic shop and they're like, "Hey, what is this book?" Like, what book would you say represent like is the closest maybe to this story?
I think for me, it feels similar to a lot of the stuff I did on Thor, like especially like the Thor God of Thunder stuff, which was a little darker. It was like a mix of fantasy and horror and a lot of different elements. Then there was a lot of world building throughout my Thor run where I was establishing the kind of different Norse realms and doing a war that, it took us on a tour of all those and kind of set them all on fire. And so there's a lot of that in there. Of course, it's reminiscent of Conan, since it's Mahmoud and I reuniting along with colorist Matt Wilson, who was the colorist on those books, and he and Mahmoud are an incredible team together. Um, but then for me, I think there's also an element of like kind of Southern Bastards or Men of Wrath or some of the kind of dark, gritty Southern family dramas I've done, and that's really the root of the story. In the midst of all the huge fantasy elements.
It's with me. It's I feel it's funny because of course the first thing you would think would probably be Conan, which is true. It's probably closest to Conan with what I did and everything. Of course, working with Jason on that, but I also see a lot of X-Men stuff in this. Like working on it as with the X-Men stuff, especially the later stuff that I did, there was a lot of personal interactions, like human stuff going on, which was probably the core of the story. And we have a lot of that over here, despite all this craziness and all this crazy world and everything. In the core of the story, we have this family who care for each other, the personal interactions with all of this is really probably the most important and part of it. And I would say Conan and X-Men, and I also even see probably some of my Supergirl work in this. In that, like in Supergirl when I did it, the New 52, where she arrives on Earth and she's like in this whole new world, and she's like doesn't know what to do, and it's like thrown into this craziness and everything. So like it's exactly the same over here in a way, like Slade, uh, and they have similar hair too. So yeah, so he gets into this world, and like he's totally craziness and everything, so I see some similarities over there as well.
Excellent. And so you guys kind of gave it up already that the first volume is going to be 6 issues. Is there intent to go beyond the 6 issues?
Yeah, sure. We're already thinking of what we're gonna do next with this stuff. There will be even probably one shots or spin-off stuff, but of course the main plan is doing more arcs going forward. Like we're thinking of the first story being like a book one, and then having further books further down the line.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's a lot we want to do. I mean, there's like Mahmoud said, there's kind of the main narrative of the Slaymaker family and their place in the yard and relationship with it, and that'll be an ongoing story told over the course of different books. But there's also a lot of other characters that we introduce, sort of the of the mites in the yard and the different factions of mites, and so there's a lot of stuff we want to do with them as well. So I think there's a lot of possibilities, a lot of things, different versions of that we want to do, whether the different miniseries, different one shots, different stories, exploring kind of all aspects of that world.
And I don't know if we've touched on this, but the mites are the natively tiny people, correct?
Right.
Yep, yep, yeah. They're like big enough to sort of ride a beetle like it's a horse.
So I don't know where you fall in this, Jason. I know Mahmoud mentioned that you're not a big bug guy. I'm terrified of bugs. I hate bugs. I enjoyed this book. I enjoyed them on in a comic book. In real life, not a big guy. Jason, are you a bug guy?
The No, I mean I have a lot of bugs around my house, like not living bugs, hopefully, but like the,
Okay.
bugs and lucite and stuff. So I've always been
Right,
kind
right.
of fascinated, and I've got, a beetle that I wear around on my skin all the time. But I think as a kid, like as that version of me who was rolling around in the grass of that backyard, he was always, lifting up rocks to see what scurried out from underneath them. Like I was very much a kid at peace in the rolling around in the weeds and in the woods. Now I'm like, if I go camping, we gotta like bougie it up. There better be an air mattress and there better be some, lush accommodations because I'm like a princess. But yeah, I don't know where that leaves me in terms of bugs. I like them as long as they stay over there,
Right.
just like don't touch me. Don't get in my shit. Just stay out of my stuff.
So what can we look forward to? I mean, I just to be perfectly clear, like I'm definitely a Sid when it comes to the Bug Wars. Like I don't know
You
if
want to you want to kill them all? Is that
yeah. Like not to sound like an awful person on like the internet, but like yeah, I hate bugs. Like they can go, they can definitely go away. Um, but what can we look forward to as the story develops a little bit more? Obviously, I mean, can we talk about who the main character is going into to the Bug Wars? Because I mean, I don't think we've mentioned that.
well, Slade. Slade
Right.
is the main character. He's the kid who's like, 14, 15 years old, and Sid's his older brother. So Slade's our point of view character. He's the guy who stumbles upon gets shrunk down, goes into the yard, and we follow him around. He meets a lot of other people along the way, and then there's also more of his family, his mom and his older brother and his dad who died a few years before. So yeah, Slade's the main character. I will say whether you hate bugs, you're afraid of bugs, or you love bugs, I think this is a book for you. Or, you know, maybe even if you're indifferent about bugs. But I think this there's an element of like the fearfulness of and the scariness of insects in some way, and what could happen, if things go really, really bad in terms of our relationship with bugs. But I think, we also have like Yannick Paquette did a variant cover for us, who's an amazing artist, also an amateur entomologist, and he's a big fan of the book. So I think we can please you no matter your personal feelings on insects.
Well, guys, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. I'm looking forward to Bug Wars. I've gotten to read the first two issues, which means I have to wait to get to issue three, which is always super disappointing because I'm terrible at waiting. But I'm super excited for Bug Wars. It is on FOC this week. So make sure you swing by your local comic shop, specifically Coliseum Comics, to order your copy or let them know that you want to get on subscription for that. And we look forward to seeing Bug Wars when it comes out. Thanks, guys.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.